Hello everybody, welcome to the video. My name is Maze and today we are going to be continuing to work on these Deacon crosses. So this is where we left off last time, and this video we're going to be adding a base that has some engraving on it. So let's go out to the workshop and make some dust. And so I'm new to engraving, so I wanted to do that part first. So I'm starting off with a 1/8 inch piece of plywood, and I have my template I made on Inkscape, and I'm just gluing it to the plywood and then carving it out or engraving it out. I'm using a Dremel tool. Now this Dremel tool, it's my dad's that he gave me. I'm not sure what model or make it is, but I have to wear a glove because it will just burn your hand. The exhaust port is just right where you need to be holding on to it, and it will burn your hand if you don't wear a glove. And it also has a problem of it's a lot of fine dust. You have to blow it out, so you can't wear a dust mask. So I think it would just be a lot better if instead of having the exhaust from the little motor blow right onto your hand and burn you, they should have it blowing forward and blowing out whatever you're carving or engraving, but I may do with it. The fine dust is not really good for you. I need to find a more permanent solution because it was giving me a headache after a while. And then here's what it looks like after it's all said and done. Then I sketched out the pattern that I wanted it to have. Then I cut that out over on the scroll saw and added a general area where the mortise for the cross is going to be, and then cleaned it up on the belt sander. Then I took the mahogany that I'm going to use on the base and just cross cut it real quick on the scroll saw. Doesn't need to be square, so I didn't go over to the miter saw. And glued the engraving plaque onto the base. Now a trick to copying a pattern a little bit bigger is to get a washer that has a thickness that you want and just follow it around the edge. And then I went back to the scroll saw and cut that out and then cleaned it up on the belt sander. Then I took it over to my makeshift router table and put a 45-degree chamfer around the edge. And then I needed to mill up some maple for the rest of the base. Now this piece of maple is too big to fit in my miter saw area, so I have to cut it by hand. And that's why even in modern times with all the power tools, you should still know how to use basic hand tools, because sometimes it's the quickest and easiest way to do it, and sometimes it's the safest way to do it. So knowing how to make basic cross cuts like this with a handsaw should be something everybody knows how to do. And so if you want some tips on how to make some hand cuts, specifically with a Japanese saw, I have a video on that. I'll leave a link in the description and in the cards. And then I could take it over to the table saw and rip it to the size I needed. And then I go over to the planer and make sure that it's got a uniform thickness. Now you could see me checking them for square, and since they're square, I could use the planer to plane them to the final width. I don't have to go to the jointer and the table saw. I could just do it at the planer, especially with wood this thick. And so I'm going to be using these boards for this project and another one, so I went over to the table saw and resawed them in half. Now a bandsaw would be better to use for this, but I don't have a bandsaw, so this is how I do it. And then it's back over to the planer to get rid of the saw marks from resawing it and make sure everything is a uniform thickness. And then it's time to work on the mortise for the crosses. And so to start off, I'm just cutting the mortise into the 1/8 inch plywood. And once I get that to fit, I'll drill out a hole in the mahogany and then go to the scroll saw and cut it out, being sure to stay within the outline I've made in the plywood. Then it's back to the bench to fine-tune that hole, chisel out the little bit I left on the sides, and just really use the chisels and the file to kind of dial it in so it's a nice friction fit. Then I'll take this time to sand the base. I always like to sand things when they're apart because it'll be a lot harder to sand together. So anytime you have a chance to just sand everything to about 220 right here, you just take that chance, even though you're going to have to come back and do it again later, probably by hand. You just want to do it as much as you can, then you'll have less work to do at the end. Then I could cut a piece of the board I made for the base and glue that on there. A nice trick is to use a straw for the squeeze out of those tight corners. You can just run it along and it will go into the straw, and then you can cut the straw and do it again on the next one. Then I use the washer trick again to make my outline. Go over to the scroll saw and cut it out, and then head on over to the belt sander to clean it up. And here's what it looks like when it's done. And then I did that 10 more times. And that's where I'm at right now. In the next video, I'm going to finish up some carving and shaping on the sashes, and then go over my finishing process. And so if you're interested in seeing how these things turn out, and you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you like what you're seeing so far, if you could give me a thumbs up and share it with your friends, I'd appreciate that. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Support your local craftsmen, or go out in your own workshops and make your own dust.